Hey guys, Brian from Boas here. About a month ago I had a really nice litter of Crawl Key Dwarf Boas. Today I want to give you guys an update on that Crawl Key Boa litter, tell you guys how they're doing. I'm going to show you guys the parents, and I'm going to get out my close-up lens and take a real close look at some of the babies. So be sure to stay tuned for that. So these Crawl Key Dwarf Boas, if you're not familiar with them, they're a really cool dwarf island boa from a small island known as Crawl Key off the coast of Belize. And at some point, many thousands of years ago, the ancestors of these boas made it there from the mainland, and they evolved this smaller form in response to the limited food supplies. They also have kind of this anerythristic looking appearance with very little red pigments, mostly grays and blacks. And they're just a really cool species or type of boa to work with. And so this is actually my female. So she's one of the older boas in my collection. She was born in 2005, so she's about 17 years old. She was produced by Rio Bravo Reptiles, and I'm not the original owner. She actually had like 2 or 3 litters before I got her. And then I luckily got her. She was being rehomed. So I was lucky to add her to my collection. She's actually had 3 litters since I got her, and this was her 3rd litter. And so she's actually quite big for a Crawl Key. Most of them are like 4 to 5 feet as adults. She's probably about 5.5 feet, so this is about as big as they're gonna get. And she's also quite laid back. These Crawl Key boas are typically pretty docile, pretty relaxed, so they're nice to handle. They're pretty strong actually for their size, but not too squeezy. Just, a cool boa to take out. They're great for people that want a boa constrictor, but they don't want a really big snake, as these guys are usually not much bigger than like a large corn snake or ball python. And so this female did really good. She had a litter of 13 babies actually, although one of them died like 2 days later. Sometimes they have babies and they look okay at birth, but then they just die. So there was probably something going on internally with that one. But the remaining 12 are doing quite well. This female's doing quite well. She's eaten several times. She's starting to put the weight back on that she lost from the litter. Of course, she's not going to be breeding next year, and then we'll see about the following year. She is getting up there in age, so there's a pretty good chance I'll breed her again, but I just have to see how she's doing, 2 years from now, or a year and a half for the 2024 breeding season. And the babies are doing quite well also. Most of them have eaten. I still have a few that haven't eaten, so I'm going to try a few more times with a live fuzzy to see if they eat it. If I have to assist feed them, I'll probably wait another few weeks, give them another couple chances to eat. But hopefully they will mostly or all eat without having to assist feed them. So with that in mind, let's take a quick look with my close-up lens and see some of these babies up close. Here's a baby Crawl Key boa, and these guys are about a month old now. And so this guy has a pretty typical appearance. You can see he's got fairly well-defined saddles, kind of blocky-ish. The saddles can sometimes be a little bit aberrant, but this guy has mostly fairly blocky saddles. And he also doesn't have much striping. Some of them will show some striping towards the tail where the saddles are kind of fused together and form a stripe. But this one has a fairly symmetrical, even pattern. And this guy is kind of a little bit light. Sometimes they kind of go from darker to lighter. This guy is kind of more in his light face. So, nice example of a Crawl Key Dwarf Boa. And there's a side view. This next baby is a little bit darker, and as I said, they do vary from day to, or hour to hour really, in terms of how dark they are. They kind of go from dark to light. There's some variability also. Some animals are just naturally darker or lighter, but it also varies within the same animal. So depending on when you look at it. And this guy has a little bit more of a, the saddles are a little bit more irregular. You can see some of them are a little bit connected, a little bit of striping. And then I'm not sure how well it comes in the camera, but this guy's got a lot of pink on his sides, a lot of nice pink undertones. And you'll get them to stretch out a little bit. Maybe you might slither a bit so you can take a look at them. They're not the most active boas. They kind of just want to curl up and hang out. But hopefully you can see a little bit of the pink with this side shot, but it's kind of hard to see with this camera. One more baby from the 1-month-old litter of Crawl-Key Boas. This guy has some striping, and usually I'll have maybe 2 or 3 from every litter that have a significant amount of striping. Typically it's about 1/4 to 1/3 of the body, sometimes up to half, and it's typically closer to the tail. So this guy, his front 2/3 or so, the saddles are a little irregular, a little bit jungly looking, and then towards the tail you can see they're kind of fused together into this stripe. You can see right there. And then he has got pretty much normal looking tail blotches. And some people really like the striping. So I'm not sure, it's probably genetic. I actually held back some animals with striping, and we'll see how well it gets passed on to the next generation once they reach breeding age. Overall, a real nice example of a Crawl-Key Dwarf Boa, and you can see from this small sampling that the babies do have quite a bit of variability in their patterns. This is in contrast to some of the other island boas like the Closeups Dwarf Boas, which are found fairly close by in the wild, that have a really uniform look to them and not much variability. But there's usually something cool and different in every litter of baby Crawl-Key Dwarf Boas. Now that we've seen some of the babies, I thought I'd show you the father. So this guy is the dad. He is a 2013 Crawl-Key Boa bred by Michael Beach from Rio Bravo Bloodlines. And this guy's about 4 feet. He's pretty typical for an adult male Crawl-Key Boa. The females will often get, a little bigger than the males. But my adult female is really large. Most of the Crawl-Keys, even the females, aren't going to get that big. But this guy is real chill. I really like handling this guy. He's just kind of hangs out, doesn't try to get away, doesn't squeeze too hard. But he's got a good feel in the hand. Some boas, you pick them up and they just feel really nice, holding them in your hand. And the Crawl-Key Boas are certainly a boa like that. Other boas, they kind of spaz out and they kind of throw themselves and try to get away. And it's just not as nice of a handling experience. But I really enjoy handling these Crawl-Key Boas. And actually I had another male originally that I got with my original female. He passed away suddenly for mysterious reasons, and I was able to get this male from Michael Beach a few years ago. And the last 2 litters that I've had have been with this male, so he's a real good breeder. But just a beautiful animal. I love the nice white belly on this guy. And just a nice boa to take out, nice animal to show people, show them that boas aren't these giant snakes. They can be actually quite small and manageable like this Crawl-Key Boa, while still showing all the really cool boa constrictor behaviors. So the Crawl-Key have grown on me a lot in the last 5 or 10 years, and they're now at the top of my list of my favorite locality boas. So that's the dad of the litter. I'm going to end the video by showing you guys a full sibling holdback from the litter of this year. This is a 2020 holdback Crawl-Key Boa from the same exact parents. So you can see he's put on quite a bit of size. I mean, most of you guys would think that this is tiny for a 2-year-old boa, but this is a really good size for a 2-year-old Crawl-Key. In fact, some of them aren't even this big. So this guy's probably just maybe around 3 feet, maybe a little bit less. But he's got that nice muscular body. This guy's markings are pretty similar to the dad. You can see he's kind of got blocky, blotched saddles, and then a lot of the saddles have fused to form this stripe towards his tail. But they're just really cool. The patterns on these guys, you can have some that have mostly symmetrical saddles. You can have some that kind of have kind of aberrant looking saddles with lots of striping and partial striping and like a lot of different looks. So this guy he's eating frozen thawed. Sometimes the crawl key can be a little tricky to switch from the live to the frozen thawed. I actually held back a couple females from this litter, the 2020 litter, and one of them is it's challenging to get her to eat frozen thawed. You know, sometimes I just give up and have to feed her a live mouse. Because what I'll do is I'll dangle the frozen thawed and I'll kind of make it look like it's alive and kind of tease her with it. And, you know, she gets pissed off and strikes and constricts. But then often she just releases it. So I got to go back and do it again, you know, 2 or 3 times. And then sometimes I think that she's going to eat it and I come back the next day and I see that it hasn't been eaten and it's starting to decompose. So sometimes I just give in and give her live. But this male is eating a frozen thawed. And usually they'll switch to frozen thawed when they're about a year or so old. And this guy is probably a few years away from breeding. They grow pretty slowly, as you might imagine, for a dwarf boa. So they'll probably put on about 6 to 8 inches a year is all. And that's the normal growth rate for a crawl key dwarf boa. You definitely don't want to overfeed these guys. You know, I feed them about every 2 to 3 weeks when they're babies and sub-adults, and you probably don't want to feed more often than that. So that's the crawl. Oh, the last thing I wanted to tell you guys is, yes, a lot of the babies, actually all the babies from the litter I just had, are going to be up for sale in probably about a month and a half or so. I'm not going to hold it back any of them since I already have quite a few holdbacks from my previous litters. And so they will be available around October-ish. And the best way to get information is to follow this channel. And I'll let you know when they're available and where you can go to see pictures and to see prices, things like that. So please stay tuned to the channel if you're interested in possibly acquiring some really nice pure crawl key dwarf boas. So I hope this video was helpful. As always, shoot me any questions or comments you may have. Thanks for watching and enjoy your boas.